Hi, this is Ed, and I'm in San Diego, as you could see, or maybe you don't know this is San Diego. This shot was not mine. I didn't take this one. This was a gift from the CEO to me, CEO of the San Diego Regional Economic Development Organization and Convention Visitors. And what you're looking at in the middle of that screen is the San Diego Convention Center, stretched out left to right. And excuse me, the tall buildings behind my head, that's the Hyatt Twin Peaks and the Grand Hyatt. And where I'm coming from is a low-rise condo behind uh, those Twin Peaks, looking out towards the ocean. And what you're seeing in the foreground here, just so you know, is a man-made development that was donated by a group of very wealthy people. So there's absolutely no tax dollars connected with this huge thing. It's a recreation area, and behind it is what's called the Rady Shell. The symphony orchestra plays there, and other rock and roll type acts like Beach Boys or James Taylor is coming in soon. And in warmer weather, it's just a beautiful place to be at night. This time of year, it's a little chilly. So that's my story about San Diego. It's a wonderful area to work in and live in. Currently, there has been a building boom, a real estate uh, building boom. The almost every corner parking lot, they're already owned, but many of them have now been developed or are being built on by high rises. The area from where I am in Seaport Village to Little Italy, it's about 12 blocks. And that whole area has become very Manhattan-like with high-rise, 40-story, mainly apartment buildings, a couple of hotels. So there's absolutely been a boom in construction here. They haven't done anything to fix the streets, but that's the gridlock that's going to happen someday, I'm sure. So that's San Diego, and thank you for being on this show. It's a very special occasion for me, and we're going to bring Paul Falcone onto the stage now. And today we're going to award Paul Falcone the Communicator Award, and that's from our publication, Global Business News. I started that award actually with Philip Berry as number one recipient in year 2000. At that time, he was based in Paris for Colgate-Palmolive as a global director of talent development in 60 countries. So it certainly was a communicator. And every year since, we've been giving an award. But this year it's different. We're not having a big hoopla celebration with 20 people on the screen, each about 1 inch tall. We're giving full frontal coverage to each award winner with their own TV show. And Paul Falcone is our winner today. So thank you. Paul Falcone, for many years, has been a friend and advisor and a customer. Uh, Paul Falcone, as a communicator from a corporate point of view, as a CHRO, but with an executive, always an executive view into organization development and people talent development. And that's the reason why I wanted to honor you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ed. Ed, that's really lovely. I appreciate that very much. And there's no one else I'd rather share this with than you and Dr. Kenneth Lloyd, my dear friend. And I think Ken and I can honestly say we wish we were in San Diego with you right now. So there you go. You did a great job describing that beautiful city. It's just gorgeous down there.
It's really nice. Thank you. So you guys are from San Fernando Valley and beyond, uh, in LA, and I think all of us are going to have a bit of summer later today with the Santa Anas. Yesterday
Yeah.
was a different story here in downtown San Diego. It was winter. And but now it's clear blue sky, and I'll be wearing shorts later. But let's talk about AI and what you see, your view, and how it's going to change or already is changing talent development, the acceptance. HR is, I would think, in the lead of a combination of technology and people systems and the C-suite. You're in the C-suite, have been for many years. You're a member of the board of American Management Association, and a much in demand speaker at so many different organizations. So tell us about the pivotal role you see HR, CHRO. Yeah, and you can break it down into organizations such as with 1,000 or more employees and smaller. Paul.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ed. And I'd be interested to hear Ken's take on this too, as a fellow CHRO. The funny thing is, since COVID, HR got its proverbial seat at the table. And it was one of those things that says, watch out what you ask for, you may get it. But CEOs realized that the people, remember there was the Great Resignation, and companies couldn't find people, and the local pizzeria couldn't find anyone to wait tables or cook, or it's like there was a vacuum. And all of a sudden, I think CEOs realized for the first time, people really are your most important asset because they may go home at night and they may not show up the next day. And then we pivoted to this idea of remote learning, or I should say remote communication, and everything became Zoom and Zoom fatigue. But the CEOs, all of a sudden, when you poll them, starting around 2023, and you're asking these CEO surveys, what's one of the top 5 things you look for in your senior executive teams? One of the top 5 was emotional intelligence. Now, when I was growing up in human resources, when I was younger, we used to call them soft skills. And they'd be like, soft skills, that's so HR, get out of here, right? This kind of thing. But now all of a sudden, it's one of the top 5 things. Why? Because the communication drives the leadership. The communication drives the team building. The communication style drives the collaboration. And managing the unseen is not easy. So you have to make sure that your people are engaged because you can't see them. And that's mostly going to come from the relationship they have with their bosses. And so the C-suite kind of realized the significance of the communication piece, and HR was the department of the people, right? So it was like, are our people trained? Do our senior executives know how to da da da? Do our middle level operational managers know how to build bonds with people, build their self-esteem, make them do their best work every day with peace of mind? Those were some of the challenges. And HR has been in that seat since COVID. I always said that COVID reintegration phase was probably going to take 5 years at least. So we're talking from when it ended 2022 to 2027. It's going to take time. We still feel the effects of this, Ed. And that to me is real, but that's how HR all of a sudden got I guess I would say the attention it wanted, got its seat at the table. And even as we move into AI, it's the same type of thing. AI is not an IT function per se, but it does rely on the chief information officer. But it's much more about process and understanding workflows and understanding work design and what the roles are that people are doing. It's only when you have a true understanding of that that you can implement AI correctly to make things more efficient. So that's my initial take on both CHRO and the AI piece.
Dr. Ken Lloyd, tell us a little bit about the audience out there, about your PhD and how it relates to what Paul was just talking about. And also, I want to ask you, Ken, to begin a dialogue with Paul, and I'll just listen, about do CEOs know how to behave around HR today?
Oh, a couple of interesting questions. Now, quickly, my educational background, my doctorate is in organizational development specifically. And my interest has always been in people and organizations, whether it's in terms of leadership, training, development, even out to recruiting, job design. If it deals with people at work, it's just had an interest for me. And pursued that at UCLA and then did some teaching over there, and then went into consulting and business writing. In terms of what Paul was just saying, it's so interesting. Yeah, you're right. It used to be talking about hard skills and soft skills. And the hard skills are technology, the analytics, and all, and soft skills is being nice to people and all that simplistic stuff. And now it's really so much deeper, and an understanding of what is really part of effective leadership and management in an organization. And it is that understanding, a key quality being empathy, that managers and leaders learning to understand their employees and treating them as individuals and building around them. In terms of chief executive officers relating to human resources, I totally agree with Paul. We've seen recent changes in part as a result of, or certainly along with, what occurred during the COVID pandemic, and recognizing that, gee, there is something more to HR than handling the payroll and overseeing recruitment and maybe running in when employees are in a combat situation with each other, but really as a profession that is very important as part of the C-suite from the strategy standpoint, from building the organization, and certainly in terms of collaboration and cooperation and helping align employee goals with the goals of the organization itself. So it's a real evolutionary change, but it's moving along at a very nice pace. Yes, AI has a role in this. It's not that we're turning things over to AI. We have to be very careful and judicious in that area, because we still know, like humans, AI is not perfect, and it's not something we can say, oh, let AI do it and walk away, but rather using it as a tool, as a support element, and still the human element is critical to make AI even that much more effective.
Cool.
Totally agree. The funny thing about it all is it's coming at us too quickly. I mean, I hate to say it, but we're part of a 24/7 news cycle. And it seems like everything is so urgent all the time. So, quick thought. In November of 2022, if you had asked someone on the street, what is AI? They might say, I don't know, the Art Institute, right? And then in November, OpenAI comes out with ChatGPT. And by December, there were already headlines that said things like, the world is going to change. This is the end of the world. I even saw something in a fairly prominent magazine at the time that said, no child born today will live to see the age of 8. And I thought, wow, from October, we didn't even know what the acronym stood for, to December, the world is ending. There's a lot of noise out there, Ed. And one of the things that when you look at so much going on geopolitically, economically, where Americans are finding themselves, the challenges happening all over the globe in the industrialized nations, there's so much out there. The employees can't necessarily leave it at the doorstep when they walk in your office or they walk onto your shop floor. So part of it, and Ken, to your point, it's almost like when you think about emotional intelligence and you correlate it with this idea of empathy or listening abilities or the ability to care. That's where your connection is coming in, and that's what we've not paid attention to in the past. So, yeah, you can Google real quick, what are the top 5 priorities of CEOs? And there are a dozen surveys that'll pop up. And you'll typically see, in my experience, emotional intelligence or something along those lines in one of their top 5. But we also know the Gen Y millennials, the 45 and under, and the Gen Z Zoomers, the 28 and under, roughly, they're the most studied generational cohorts in world history. We know everything about them thanks to the think tanks, the university researchers, the big 4 accounting firms, the big 3 management consulting firms. There's like so much out there. And one of the things that they want is they want to work for a management team that cares about them personally. And when you think about that, it's like, that's not unreasonable. And we've all been affected by COVID. We all lost 3 years, either of our high school years, our college years, our first years in business, or whatever it happened to be. There's a healing that has to take place. And if you look to one department that can hopefully bridge that gap and make that healing happen, HR would be the one, because you do think of it as the people department. When people, I think when CHROs are looking at it that way, it's like, how are we integrating Gen Z Zoomers, the kids? The 27, 28-year-olds and below, the Zoomers are testing out as the loneliest, most isolated, most depressed generational cohort on the planet, even more so than retirees in retirement homes.
And untrusting.
Yeah, right. And so the idea is, wait a second, we as the adults in the room, right? Management, not having to do with age. When you're in management, I think we have an opportunity, but we also have an obligation to help this younger generation integrate. They are the first truly digital generation. They don't know time before cell phones and whatnot. This is how they learn. This is how they communicate. We need to teach them to become, not for anything. It's an alienating type of thing. They're not talking enough with each other. They don't have those personal relationships. So I've always said it's like we've lost the ability to sit around the campfire and have the elders pass wisdom down to the younger generation. That's what the staff meetings are for now. This is how you bring these younger generations up so that they understand how do you develop friends at work and how do you develop mentors at work. Because once they're integrated and their hearts are into it, it's so much better an experience. But it's hard because people are still working remotely, 2 days a week on average, or 3 days a week, depending on what industry you're in. And that's not enough. They're only going to develop these personal relationships when you realize it's the human connection that counts. And the final thought on that, HBR, Harvard Business Review, wrote a book. One of their books, I think, is called On Teams. But the book basically said the effectiveness of a team can be directly correlated to the amount of time that team members spend together doing non-work related activities. Read that, the holiday party, the company picnic, the quarterly meetings, the monthly those social elements are so critical to team success because people start to get to know each other and trust each other.
Paul, you've been doing a number of speaking engagements. I follow you on LinkedIn and HR type organizations, but all over the place. And our Gen Z is showing up at those.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they definitely are. There's a hunger out there, Ed. We're not identifying it. It's very easy to sit back and say, oh, Gen Z wants the corner office by the time they're 30. But I always tell people, be careful. That's what my father said about me, and I'm a boomer. So do you know what I mean? It's like we tend to dismiss the younger generations. This time it truly is different, though. It's different than any other generation in the past in the sense where that electronic connectivity has really hurt them, has really isolated an entire generation. And I do think we have a responsibility to bring them back into the tribe, so to speak, to bring them back into the family, whatever metaphor you want to use. I think when CHROs are thinking in that mindset, it's one thing to think, well, how's the business operating? I understand that. Oh, AI, I get that too. But what's our moral obligation? One of the books I'd written is on workplace ethics. And it's like, what are we doing when you're talking about mastering ethics and really sustaining a moral workplace? That's part of the HR suite. And also, that is one of the top 5 things that the Gen Y and Gen Z want. They want to work for an ethical employer. When you think of corporate social responsibility, environmentalism, sustainability, that's an element of it. But people want to know that they're working for an organization that's making the world a better place. To the degree that you can build your operation around those types of things, even, putting in the trash container where you put bottles and you put cans and you put paper, cardboard, it's making the world a better place. It's small, it doesn't cost much, but boy, it can make a difference because people feel like the organization is trying and our goals and our values are aligned.
So HR is pivotal to communicating from within the organization, particularly down, and come at almost being a social director or a university president. So what about the transformation of a place to work into quote unquote a university?
Yeah, Ken, I want to see what you think because you're in that CHRO suite too. But for me, it's almost like people think of the HR department as the culture of the organization. If you've got an HR department where, oh, the head of HR is really cool, he's really nice, you should really get to know him. I've never spent any time with him that I didn't walk away with some really great ideas. He really cares. It's the top of the organization that makes the difference. So if the CHRO is someone who is distant, if the CHRO is someone who is not looking to engage people, that can affect the entire organization because people do oftentimes think of the HR department as kind of the heart and soul of the place. It's like they dictate what that culture is. Now, granted, it's going to come from your C-suite, your CEO, CFO, COO. I get that. But those are roles. If you're thinking about a department that people typically think this is what our culture is, they kind of naturally go to the HR function. And it's like if they love HR, they tend to love the company. If they don't like HR, it's like, oh, this company, blah, blah, blah. No one cares. And that's kind of what my experience has been. Ken, in your CHRO suite, have you kind of seen similar? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so interesting because while some will think of HR as some tangential department off to the side, it does play a critical role in terms of employee commitment and interest in the organization and sense of belonging, cooperation, collaboration. HR can play a key role, just as you said, by some of the easy to fix issues. Let's put out some recyclable containers and let's enhance the ways employees can meet informally, whether it's a coffee bar, so they are communicating more and not as isolated. And at the same time, there's such a huge paradigm shift. When young employees used to come into the workforce, labor force, they were, if you will, taught by the experienced employees. And some of that mindset still prevails. Come on in, we'll teach you how to do this and how to do that. At the same time, as in quotes, more senior, AKA older employees, we have to recognize that there's so much we can learn from them. And to listen to them, to their ideas, their inputs, their creativity, their ways of approaching the job. And certainly in terms of technology. I mean, I know if I can't find something on my phone, my 9-year-old granddaughter will find it in 2 seconds. We can learn from them instead of having this rift and recognizing at the same time, these younger generations are moving into the majority of the labor force and the workforce. And that whole paradigm shift is going to continue to have an impact. But there's so much we can gain from them as well as from us. If we go along with what Paul is saying, with the idea of communication, listening, and empathy that can be demonstrated and implemented by the HR team and building from there.
Paul, is Gen Z, this is just a question to generate more conversation, is Gen Z able to be more agile than boomers?
Yeah, yes. The thing, Ed, I keep going back to these surveys. I'm sorry. When you look at these top 5 priorities that CEOs have, agility, flexibility, and adaptability, change readiness is one of the 5 boxes. And one thing the young ones, it's always going to be, I mean, I hate to sound it, but the younger ones are coming in and they want to, burnish their brand. They want to reinvent things. There's a natural inclination there for them to call it and say, you know what, we could be doing things differently. You just have a management team that has to listen to that. Ken, to your point, when they talk about upskilling, reskilling, and everything else, there's also the concept of reverse mentoring. And the example I always give is the movie The Intern with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway. And it is one of the cutest movies you'll ever watch, but it's great for team building. Everyone should watch that movie because it talks about there was so much to be learned. I won't give away the plot, but by the elder intern, right? The person who was retired who applied for an internship in a startup company where everyone was so young and they wanted the wisdom of the elder. And so Robert De Niro comes in and becomes the hero. I won't go more than that, but it's a team building activity. So yeah, there's a natural energy that comes from every new generation to reinvent things. The wiser elders hopefully will be able to channel that in a healthy direction. But it comes from, again, mutual cooperation. We have much to learn from them, just like they have to learn from us. And
I watched that movie.
Wasn't that a great movie?
I learned from it. And the way that, of course, he's a great actor. So whoever the screenplay writer was, I forget, but whoever the screenplay writer was, they were really tuned in on an older person like me or you would ignore the kids. And
Oftentimes.
and the kids noticed and says, hey, boomer, smarten up. We're your future. And that broke the ice. Something like that happened.
Yeah.
And it was just beautifully done on screen. And from that moment on, they collaborated much more.
Correct. And then I'll tell you one more thing. And when you think about CHRO, you have to think of the word talent. The idea is talent scarcity is here to stay in all the industrialized countries for the rest of this century. There's a great book out there called The Next 100 Years. Like
So,
yeah,
excuse me, are you saying talent scarcity, not the numbers, but the capability, the trained, that's what's scarce, right?
both. And
Uh,
I'll tell you, here, it's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. In November 2022, the world had 8 billion human beings. When I was born in 1963, the world had 4 billion. The world doubled in one lifetime, right? Because of medicine changes and everything else. So you would think one thing we've got is people. And it's not true. Where most of those people were born were in the non-industrialized nations. The industrialized nations are all suffering from talent scarcity, and this will be the rule, the law of the land. That Robert Friedman, George Friedman book, The Next 100 Years, talks about that. I like these books that kind of, from these economists and these futurists, and they can look forward and say, what are all these major trends? But it's like, I think I've shared on your show before, China's one-child policy went on for 4 decades. It was never meant to go that long. South Korea has the lowest birth rate on the planet. Japan has 125 million residents. By 2040, I think that number is going to be under 100 million. The average age is going to be over 65. Who's going to do all the work? So we have to think about talent development, not just talent acquisition. Talent acquisition means you're a recruiter, you run an ad on LinkedIn or on Indeed.com, and all the fish jump in your boat. That's nice. That's not going to be. That was the baby boom generation when there were so many. The baby boom is gone by 2030, and it's replaced by Gen X, which is the baby bust. It's a generation only about half its size. Where are the people coming from in the industrialized nations? They're all going to face these same challenges. So, as a CHRO, you could look at that strategically and say, hey, we need to build our frontline operational leaders' abilities to grow internal talent. Where are the bottlenecks? Where can't we promote people? Well, we can't promote them to the manager level or the director level or whatever. Great. How do you build a roadmap? How do you build a training program to get people to stay within your company and promote? Those are the bigger strategic issues you really want to think about because talent scarcity will be offset by AI. Don't get me wrong. To the degree we don't know yet. But the bottom line is the human talent that we need to move forward, and not just us, but all the major economies out there are suffering. And if they're thinking about that now, they're wise to do so. And they should be thinking about succession planning.
Ken, I want to get you involved here, but I first want to talk about recent experiences I've had with Gemini, which is the Google AI. And I'm a Gemini. So
I'm a Gemini too.
there's a kinship there. June 16th. Yeah.
May 30th. Good.
Yeah. I was born in 45, by the way.
Okay.
In 63, I was a senior at Brookline High School.
Fair enough.
Holy shit. What am I doing here? So anyway, the culture of agility, the bridge, I'm reading this stuff, the bridge to building, the shaping, the next business strategy, driving transformation. I've learned trial and error with Gemini through how to prompt the Gemini to say, help me understand ABC. And this one thing comes out 30 seconds later. And I got to tell you, it's worked for me. I have to read it and rewrite a bunch of it, not all of it, to make it fit. And I actually enjoy doing that. And I learned from that. And I was given an assignment, I'll be real quick here, by a London publisher who once attended one of my London meetings in person 5 years ago or so, almost 5 years ago. And we've hit it off and remain in touch. So he's a publisher and owner of this glossy magazine called FDI, Foreign Direct Investments. And President Trump, for better or for worse, has created a boom industry of companies and governments investing buying land in the US. And now data centers are growing on this acreage. There used to be farmlands in rural areas. And so that's foreign direct investment. And so he asked me to write an article about how the relocation industry, employee relocation industry, fits into FDI in the US. And so I'm working on that right now. My deadline is Monday morning. This will be the 5th article that I will have written for this guy. Basically all in the same topics, just different topics. So I asked Gemini to help me understand the relationship between foreign governments, foreign investors buying land in the US, and how it ties in with the local economic development people, LED. So FDI, LED, local economic development, and the organizations and agencies that are plugged into developers who will build something. And then that means job creation. And the tie-in that I'm talking about is the trained real estate broker and relocation mobility management company who can help people find a new home in this community, whether it's in Kentucky or Arkansas or Palm Springs, California, who knows? It's all happening in all these places and beyond. And so I have people now, because of what I asked Gemini to help me with, following through on Gemini's instructions. And I'm going to get the credit of pulling this thing together. Fascinating. Ken, what do you see with Gemini or Chat GPT relevant to what Paul is talking about?
Now, Gemini has certainly gotten a lot more attention lately, and there are some corporate leaders that really prefer it over ChatGPT. It's interesting to see how this will play out. I think we still need to be careful and recognize that these AI services can really help provide us with a great deal of information, but it still should come through us, through our filter, through our analysis, through our thinking, through our emotions, through our understanding, because it's not perfect, not that we are, but what a great tool of support to at least get you started on where you want to go. And certainly not just taking it and saying, yep, here it is, because it's not always right. And there are cases, certainly not in the all too distant past, of where AI has come up with totally fictitious information, inaccurate, citing lawsuits that never existed, judges that don't exist, precedents that were never set. There can even be some discriminatory comments in there attributing certain roles to females. We just have to use it as an additional tool that'll provide us with information that'll help us make whatever product, if you will, intellectual product that we're trying to develop, all that much more effective, but not to say, here it is. Just like schools are being extremely careful now in making sure that the work that students turn in is not just AI generated. And that's going on out there. And now there are actions being taken by the schools, other kinds of resources that they're using to see if the document or information that they've received from a student is simply AI talking and not the student. It's better with the human element, and combining the two, that to me is the future that we should be seeking, not just strictly, oh, let's just do this and move on. We're really going to cut the effectiveness and quality of whatever it is that we're developing.
Well,
Yeah, Ken, I totally agree. Ed, to me, it's a shakeout right now. Next couple of years, we're going to see where it goes. You know, we hear about Silicon Valley laying off 10,000, 15,000, 25,000 people. To me, that sounds very premature. And I'll tell you why. You can look at a job description. Look at Paul Falcone's CHRO job description. Can you capture that in AI? Probably. Everything that this guy does on this job description, I can capture in AI. But the funny thing is, my job description is about 10% of what I do. I mean, do you know what I mean? There's so much more about relationships and knowing how to get answers. And the job description is really just a floor. It's just a minimum expectation. It's almost like when they say you have to be able to stand and lift things. It's just a minimal document. And I have a feeling they're moving too quickly. There's been this rush since 2020, late 2022, 2023, whatever it was, to really kind of get rid of all this headcount, especially of engineers and computer people. It's like, wait a second, slow down. We don't even know what we don't even know about what's coming through AI and what sources they're pulling from. From what I'm reading, and again, as an author, I've written 17 books, I'm hearing from my publisher about, there's intellectual property theft out there and there are lawsuits that are going on. Now they're talking about the fact that there's so much AI being generated so quickly that it's cannibalizing itself. That what you're getting from Google is pulling off of Copilot, is pulling off of ChatGPT, is pulling off of Claude. And it's like, where's the original content going to come from? Because it's just proliferating so quickly. Ken, to your point, not only are there ethical considerations in the AI, but the bottom line is you don't even know if what you're getting is correct. So you have to vet it. I know the story you're talking about, Ken, where the lawyer went before the court and put this out there. And it's like the case law he cited wasn't true. The judge wasn't real. They threw that guy out. I mean, you could lose your bar license if that's what you literally bring to court is an AI generated defense or an offense or whatever it happens to be. Point being that it's in its early stages of infancy. We just learned about this a couple of years ago. Before you start jettisoning all your, safety procedures and everyone, I don't need people anymore. Oh, we're going to talk about the first person $1 billion or one person $1 billion company. It's like, slow down. It would be nice to think that, well, yeah, I don't need an administrative assistant. I can do this on Claude. But I really don't need a marketing person either. I can do that on ChatGPT. And do I really need finance? Maybe I can do that on Google. Before you know it, you don't really need to be a CEO either, do you? There's no need for the business owner. You might as well give that over to the ChatGPT too. So I think we need to kind of take a collective breath. And I think companies that are moving too quickly in that space are going to be rehiring because what they're realizing is they're cutting into the bone way too quickly. And to me, it's almost like a lemming strategy. Everyone else is cutting, so we're going to cut. They're not necessarily seeing it through the right way, my humble opinion. We'll see.
Well, I was reading earlier today, as I mentioned, I was up doing a little research on this, and I found this AI, how, I'm going to read this, how is it changing the CHR role, shifting from process to a product mindset. There was all about CHROs talking to each other, and they were thinking that this is the role, the coming role, or an enhancement of what already is going on with CHROs. HR as a product, not a process. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Let me give you an example, put some meat on those bones. A friend of mine who's a CHRO said, Paul, you know what? I needed to create job descriptions. I'd never done that in our company. And I was able to create job descriptions for all couple of hundred employees, a couple of hundred people, but X amount of job descriptions, right? And then I thought, well, let me create job advertisements because when we advertise, we can do that at the same time. Well, while I'm at it, let me kind of create a list of core competencies. Well, while I'm at it, let me kind of generate a performance appraisal template for these particular roles. And she said, before you know it, I spent 3 days totally in this, and I did work that would clearly take me adding at least one member to my team, and it would take them a year. And I did it myself in 3 days. Now, granted, I've got to vet it all. And once I do that, I have to send it to the department heads so that they can vet it, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that's how AI is going to come in. It's going to come in incrementally, Ed. It's going to increase efficiency. Yes, there will be positions that have to be eliminated because we don't need them anymore to a degree. But it makes it sound like everyone feels like every job in this country is going to be eliminated by Tuesday. It's not. It can't go that fast. It would be a major mistake. And I don't want to see companies moving so quickly through this that they find themselves out of business before too long. So again, my logic is, yes, look for the areas where you can implement AI, but you've got to understand the processes because it's all about workflows and work maps to have the product. And the product is the job description, the job ads, the performance appraisal template, the blah, blah, blah. It's helping HR people get through what historically has taken a year maybe to create an end product and create that product in a week. And they have something to show for it. So that's really, really cool. On the other hand, it is a destabilizing type of factor, and it does make people nervous. So these are the times we're in.
In my research, in prep for this, not every day, all day, but I've run into so many commentaries that say HR is not your friend. Be careful. Well, HR is a corporate role, of course. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, Ken, I want to hear the author talk about you're so into performance management. Tell us, what do you think, Ken, about that one? I've got my opinion too, but I'd love to hear yours.
Well, I think, as in any organization, there are individuals who are, quote, not your friend, whether they're in HR or whether they're in accounting or whether they're in finance or any other area. To cast that as an overall descriptor of HR to me is a gross inaccuracy. I think, just as Paul has said earlier, in many cases, HR is actually the exact opposite. And they are there to help the employees, support them, listen to them. They're truly a sounding board to come on in. What new ideas do you have? And I think in an organization where leaders are saying HR is not your friend, they may be projecting a little bit. Maybe it's just their own personality, their own approach to work, and they're seeing it because they're so familiar with it in other departments, including HR. Sure, are there some HR departments even today that are stuck on let's focus on the paperwork and let's redocument this, let's do that? Sure, just like there are managers that, yeah, they'll say, yeah, I use the Google, they don't know what, they're out of touch. Yeah, that's going to be part of it. But as an overall theme and trend, my view is that HR is the exact opposite, certainly in companies that are operating successfully. And if there is what people regard as an unfriendly HR department, they're going to see issues in terms of employee commitment, performance, productivity, loyalty, turnover, because HR will really accelerate those problems if they are regarded as unfriendly. I don't know. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, Ken, I totally agree. Ed, I'm going to go back to communication again. Where people see it is if you're the manager, you say, well, HR never lets us fire anybody in this company. Truthfully, it's because the manager didn't do it right. There's an element of progressive discipline or failed performance reviews or some kind of written notices. You can't just fire people. It doesn't work that way. So that's where you can see frustration. Or you can see an employee who goes to HR, confidentially, quote unquote, and then it blows up because they said something that HR had to act on and they didn't want their manager to know. And now HR went to their manager and all this drama kicks out. Again, communication. HR has to be able to tell someone who comes in to quote unquote file a complaint that before you go forward, I may have to disclose this depending on what it is. If it has to do with one of three things, I always said, number one, like harassment, discrimination, retaliation. Number two, potential violence in the workplace. Number three, a material conflict of interest with the organization's interests. I've got an obligation to disclose that. I can't sit on it. So before you say anything about talking to me, quote unquote, off the record, you just need to know that I might not be able to sit on it and keep it confidential. What are your thoughts? And then it puts the burden back on the employee, who at least keeps the employee in control. If the employee wants to share at that point, they can. They don't have to. The thing too, Ed, to keep in mind is HR is not a union. The union is there to support employees 100%. That's their definition. HR is meant to be more of a 50-50 role. It supports the management. It supports the employees. People get into HR because they quote unquote like people. They genuinely care as a rule, but it's not 50-50. If anything, it's 51-49. It's always going to skew in the favor of the company, not the employee. Why? Because HR exists, right, to insulate the company from liability. So, it isn't a 50-50 thing. They're not a referee. They do represent the organizational interests, and that is going to take precedent over the employee interests. But if they're good at what they do, they're great communicators. They explain to people up front before you say anything, you need to know I might not be able to keep it confidential. But the main driver for HR and the reason it exists is to protect the organization from liability. And I hate to say it, but Well, so does every department. You're either making money or you're saving costs. That's all that exists in business. That's why departments exist. So I think employees need to be a little more aware. Managers can't be so quick to blame HR for not letting them fire anybody. And it's just a little too much drama for my taste, which is why what I always did was when I went into a new company, lunch and learn, pizza's on me. Let's sit together with the management team and let's talk about this stuff. Because these are questions that they never had an opportunity to learn this stuff. Even if they had an MBA, they were talking about organizational development, organizational behavior, organizational design, these 30,000 foot view concepts. Who's teaching leadership in the trenches? Who's teaching how to communicate effectively, to set expectations, to build an environment of trust and respect? That's not taught. That you're supposed to figure out on your own. And that's not really fair. Managers who are great individual contributors don't just step into management and they're great managers. It's a different skill set. And I think that's where my books always filled the gap because they taught people how to do things. They knew what to do, they just didn't know how to do it. And teaching them to hold tough conversations, as an example, is something that makes them better leaders and more self-confident.
Well said. We have 5 minutes left. Why don't you use my screen share and display uh, that stuff that you put
Oh, I
together?
would love to. I thought you would never ask. So let's
I almost
see.
forgot.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's see. Wait, Ed, let me do this. I'm going to do slideshow
Ta-da.
from beginning. Ta-da. And the most important slide is yours, Mr. Cohen, the one that says
Yeah.
the world is watching. Not that Ken and I are nervous, but it's good to know the world is watching. That's important.
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure, my background, everyone, was I spent about 35 years in HR. So I was the CHRO of Nickelodeon Animation Studios and head of international HR for Paramount Pictures. I worked for the parent company Viacom for about a decade. I've also worked in healthcare at City of Hope. I've worked in biotech, and I've worked in financial services and private equity. Ed, to your point, I sit on the board of the American Management Association. I've been a columnist for SHRM for decades, the Society for Human Resource Management. And I've written 17 books with HarperCollins and the American Management Association. And you're wondering what those books are. So if you look over to the right, the orange one, the 101 Tough Conversations to Have with Employees, that's kind of my flagship book. And Ed, I am honored that you would give me the Communicator Award. I appreciate it. That book to me kind of encapsulates who I am. It's this idea of having an iron hand with a velvet glove, right? I've got very high expectations, but people will feel the velvet more than they'll feel the iron, so to speak. So I think you can do both, and you can do both successfully. The way you treat people makes such an incredible difference. And I'd like to think I've had very little turnover on my teams throughout my career. And I've helped people grow in their careers, whether it was at the company where I was working with them or elsewhere. And someone who I promoted to manager, first-time manager at Nickelodeon, is now the senior vice president of human resources at DreamWorks Animation. And I saw her recently and she said, Paul, I could have never gotten here without working for you. Boy, that's the gift. I would say leadership is the greatest gift the workplace offers because it allows you to touch people's lives and build their careers. It's really a special thing. When I launched my consulting firm in 2022, HarperCollins and the AMA came out with a 5 book series called the Paul Falcone Workplace Leadership Series. I was honored by that. On the far left, you'll see the book on workplace ethics. I've taught ethics for years at UCLA in the Extension School of Business and Management. They didn't really have anything. There was not, you had to use articles. There was no book. And I always wanted to write a book on managerial ethics and employee relations. To the right, you'll see the offense defense books. It's just the sports metaphor. Offense is growing, developing, motivating, and coaching. Defense is accountability, tough conversations, documenting discipline, structuring terminations. You have to know how to do all of those things. And finally, the last 2 books I wrote were part of HarperCollins' First Time Manager series. So they asked me to write the First Time Manager HR, which I was honored to do. That's the first book I ever wrote strictly for an HR audience. All my other books are for general management audiences. And they said, before you write that one, we want you to write a book that could pair with the other ones. Like someone picks up the First Time Manager sales, but ooh, look at this other book. Paul, think about what that other book could be. And I said, I don't have to think about it. Leading Through Crisis and Disruption. Everything is about managing compound volatility. It's about, building the plane while you're flying it. We became adrenaline junkies during COVID. That's not changed all that much. We are moving so quickly these days and helping managers understand how to deal with individual problems, departmental and team problems, organizational problems, and even, broader societal problems like, an epidemic or whatever it happens to be, or the politics or whatever. And finally, Ed, what I did here is I put my contact info. My webpage is just paulfalconehr.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn and my Amazon page or my HarperCollins page, whatever is easiest. So,
So,
um,
what you didn't say about your background is that you were in the UCLA marching band.
I did not. You are correct. I was first trumpet.
And so you learned how to blow your horn.
I knew how to blow my own horn from a very early age, and I am very proud of that. Those were fun days for me. I was also, my summer job at the time was as a tour guide at Universal Studios. So every
Oh,
summer I had my tour guide job, and my claim to fame there was my tram sank in the Red Sea. So when the tour guide says park the waters and the Red Sea opens and the tram goes through, I was the one in the tram where it didn't quite make it out the other side. So there you go. I'm famous.
this is the greatest story ever told on Global TV talk show. Thank you, Paul Falcone, and congratulations,
Thank you, Ed.
communicator.
Thank you for the
And
award.
now the audience knows why
Very
I
much appreciated.
chose to honor you. Ken, what's your next book? Can you talk about it, or is it secret?
It's basically a book to help, if you will, remove some of the clutter from our brains when we're at work. What's getting in the way? What kinds of we filled our brains with all sorts of extraneous information that can get in the way. So the idea is to identify it, clean it out, and replace it with some better thinking strategies. So that's what I'm working on.
So
again, I can go right to my bookcase, find
yes.
really good books.
Look
like
at that.
This.
Wow.
Paul
Wow.
Falcone books.
You have good taste in authors, as I have all yours, Ken, so we're even.
There we go. Yeah, and again, Paul, congratulations. It's a well-deserved honor. You're just a great communicator in every respect.
I can't do it. Oh,
Thank
wait.
you very much.
Trying to get this book to show up. Oh, no.
There's Ken's. I see it.
Yeah, right. There we go. But the people who pick this up aren't dummies anymore.
There you go.
That's it. Thank you, guys. We'll get you this program for your library later today. Thanks for being on.
That'd be wonderful.
Thanks right back to you. Have a good one today, guys. Be well.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, audience, for hanging in there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.